Welcome back to another episode of Magic's in the Mess, the go-to podcast for ambitious women ready to stop pretending, start aligning, and finally build success your way. I'm your host, Danielle McKinley, speaker, business and wealth strategist, and your go-to problem-solving hype girl. Here, we'll help you unlock powerful mindset shifts, discover your magic, and bring your dream life into reality. Each week, I'll deliver raw stories, proven business strategies, and powerful transformations with industry leaders to activate the magic in you. So if you're ready to ditch the pressure, the performative BS, and the noise telling you who you should be, hit subscribe and let's make some magic. Welcome back to another episode of Magic's in the Mess. Today, if you are a mom who's ever stressed about milk storage, pumping on the go, or trying to juggle motherhood and your mission, this episode is for you. Today's guest is Tirza, the founder of Milk by Mom, a revolutionary breast milk freeze-drying service based in Phoenix, Arizona that serves moms nationwide. With an MBA and 17 years of international business experience, Tirza is on a mission to modernize breastfeeding practices and give moms more freedom, flexibility, and peace of mind without sacrificing the benefits of breast milk. In this conversation, we're talking breastfeeding, entrepreneurship, motherhood, and the power of turning a problem into a purpose-filled business that's supporting women everywhere. Welcome to Magic's in the Mess.
So happy to be here.
You are truly a magic maker for moms everywhere. And you and I connected at Girlfriends in Business through Lori Harder. So thank you, Lori, for that connection.
Love her.
And I just was immediately drawn to your vibe, your energy. And then when you told your mission, like you had your mic moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this girl. So I want you to share your story and share like where this came from. Like just give us some goods.
Yeah. So I am really the lucky mom of two beautiful little girls who are 2 and 4. And so it all really started with my first daughter when she was born. She was born in the midst of COVID. So of course that's a whole separate story in and of itself. But when I was trying to travel home, she was about 9 to 10 months so that she could go meet my parents. And I was trying to figure out how to travel with 1,000 ounces of breast milk.
Wow.
And I was like, how am I going to do this? I was traveling solo. My husband wasn't coming. I didn't want to go with a pump to, it was just less is more.
Yeah.
And I spent hours looking for ways in which I could travel with my breast milk. And I remember after hours finding this one company that freeze-dried breast milk. I was on their wait list and then sent a pleading email as time was getting close, right? Please let me, squeeze me in. They did. And I got my breast milk literally the day before my trip. And it was an ultimate game changer for me. And I just remember coming home and having to tell every single person I knew, mom or not, about it. But the funny thing is that every single mom I told had no idea about it, right?
Yeah,
like, what is this?
Yeah, I wish I knew you then.
Yeah. If I only had $1 for every time I hear that from a mom, if only you had been around, I'm like, oh God, I know. Tell me about it. But fast forward to me, I was so in love with the concept of it, the flexibility it gave me, and just the fact that I guess I'll preface it with the fact that I was in med device before this. And so I was really big into clinical evidence and the research. And so before I even did this with my kid, I was like, okay, is this legit? Right. And so when I was determined that this was a truly valid form of preserving breast milk and tried it and had such an experience, I knew I wanted to make this more widely available for moms everywhere. Yeah. And that's where we are. Fast forward 2 years, that's our mission, to really revolutionize breastfeeding.
So breastfeeding for me was horrible. Yeah. Horrible. Okay. So I'm naturally gifted. Thank you, Lord, baby Jesus, for these beautiful boobs on my chest. However, they look like they could feed an army. Not the case. So tell me a little bit, like with Milk by Mom, could somebody who's struggling like I was to produce milk use someone else's freeze-dried milk? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So currently today we are a service. And so you can absolutely have donor milk freeze-dried if you source donor milk, or you got donor milk from a friend or a Facebook group. We don't currently sell breast milk.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And I do think you're onto something there. Wink,
yeah.
wink,
yeah. Let's have a little sidebar because there is a need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Love. So all right, you created something out of your own need, which is where beautiful things are born as entrepreneurs. But the beauty, like if I go to your Instagram page, it's like, yeah, she's killing it. That's not always like, there's mess behind there that nobody talks about. We want to feature the good stuff. So walk us through the journey of, you had this moment where you found this company, you're a raving fan, you're telling everybody about it, to, you know what, I'm going to start something on my own.
So I embarked on the journey, right? And so I started off and, built out the branding, the packaging, everything,
Yeah.
what was going to be our core mission, our offerings. And I was pregnant with my second daughter. And I remember I was like, I've got to launch this before Gianna's born. I have to do it. I have to do it. My mom's like,
You're
no,
nuts.
no, don't do it. And of course, typical us, because we
Yeah.
all have moms telling you not to do it. And you're like, oh God,
I'll
mom,
show
you have no
you.
idea, right? So I remember being very defensive and then listening to her. And it was the best advice I could have ever listened to. And so I put things on hold. I got them as far as possible, had Gianna, and then 2 months postpartum, I took everything up again, used the rest of my maternity leave to finish it off, get the facility, and really operationalize Milk by Mom. I went back to work and I juggled both Milk by Mom and my corporate gig for about 6 months. And that was one of the hardest moments and the hardest year of my life. I think when I have, as women, I think we have such a natural capacity to take on so much.
Yeah.
And certainly the way my persona and everything, I don't think my husband really knew and realized how close to a breaking point I was. And I just remember feeling like I was on a little island and be like, hey, like, I'm over
Help
here, like,
me.
help me. We need to slow down. But things didn't slow down.
Well, because so many women, myself included, went through stuff like that. So let's break it down a little bit to the mental state, because you're using the analogy of like, hey, I'm on this island. Hey, help me, help me. But that's not, for me anyway, that's not how I was behaving. So let's talk about the difference, right? Because that's almost like your inside voice that's talking, but our spouse, our partners, they don't necessarily read it because they're so used to us being people that are high performers, overachievers. So walk me through that part of it a little bit more.
I feel
A
like
little
you're
bit
my
deeper.
therapist right now,
Let's
which
do
I
it.
love. Well, I mean, I think that you dialed in really quick to something that's there, and there's an inner child, right? And so when you talk about, and this conversation can go in a completely different direction, but how I was presenting myself to my husband and how I normally do is I'm a strong personality. I'm a leader and I'm very capable. And so I was just taking things on and not allowing myself to vulnerably show up, especially to the person, my spouse, who could help, and ask him for help in a vulnerable way. Right. And so since then, I've tried to go in and I'm doing and actively doing a lot of inner child work, because vulnerability is hard, and something I'm not the most comfortable with, particularly with my husband, right? Where it should be the safe zone.
Well, so if I can shed any light, because like you, I mean, I'm a big advocate for therapy, and there's something about going and literally hugging your inner child that is so beautiful and so powerful and can make such a change. And it's strange, like with your husband, it's almost like, for me anyway, this is what it was, and maybe this will help you or someone listening. It's like they know me as this person and I don't want to disappoint them. It's almost like, well, what if I show this vulnerable side? Are they still going to love me? Are they still going to be attracted to me? Are they still going to, it's almost like we're putting our own selves on a pedestal instead of going, I'm struggling and I need some help. And like my husband and I have gone through this journey recently where I'm leaning into my feminine energy. I've done a lot of discovery with it. So I think it's so beautiful that you're doing that. And I think it's important because we hear these stories and people can relate to the like, I'm on an island, come help me. But what does that actually mean? Right. So go a little deeper into that if you're comfortable, and how you started to work through it in that breaking point.
Yeah. So I would say the feeling of being on an island, right? When you talk about entrepreneurship, and anybody that you talk with that's been an entrepreneur, they'll be able to relate. It's just a very lonely place, right? And that's why I definitely did not prioritize community the first year. Frankly, I wasn't even sure how I could fit it in, right? Having a newborn,
Yeah.
a 2-year-old, starting a business, juggling a corporate job, keeping my relationship, friendships.
Yeah.
So there was a lot on that plate, but it was very interesting. And I think truly I don't know if I'd call it the breaking point, but the moment that I truly realized I needed to start working on something started when my daughter was right around 3, just maybe a
Mm-hmm.
little less than 3. And she was having these emotional tantrums and
Sure.
breakdowns, right? And
Yeah.
I was getting so triggered and I
Yeah.
didn't know. And I knew, I was like, this is a small little baby who's 3 years old and she just doesn't know how to emotionally regulate. Rational self could say that to me.
Yeah.
But I was still having this like visceral body moment where I was like, I was being triggered. I'm like,
Yeah.
something's off. There's something there from from before, and I don't know where, but I need to go deep and
Find
start
it.
looking into
Mm-hmm.
it, because this isn't the person I want to be ultimately to show up for my daughter, but I also don't want to create any sort of issues to her inner child, right? And
Yeah.
limiting beliefs or any of that. That I think we all start to become so self-aware, and as you become self-aware, like, oh
Oh
gosh,
shit.
there's so much.
Guys.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
0 to 3, I messed up. I fucked up. Zero
Yeah.
to three,
Uh-huh.
no, but so I started to work with a coach who I absolutely adore, and it was such a like moment of illumination for me,
I love that.
um, and just heightened awareness. And there's still so much there, right? I've been working with a business coach who recommended To Be Magnetic.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah. And it's also, there's an app too, that they have apps and it's modules, and
Oh,
they
I
do
didn't know
all sort
about
of this
this.
stuff. And it's kind of adds on to what the work I did individually with this life coach. And now I'm like, okay, I was able to narrow down like which were my core wounds. What were those
Mm,
limiting beliefs that kept on
yeah.
showing up? And for me, it was like, I'm not enough. And I just remember
Mm,
anytime that anything would go wrong with the business, the internal self-sabotage of like telling myself I'm not enough, and then okay, being in the car and crying, and then getting off and then showing up and being like everything's perfect, and not letting my husband into it,
yeah.
and then also trying to show up and be a good mom while having this moment where my threshold and I wasn't in the right balance. So it's been a journey, and I'm still definitely in it. But I think you often will hear moms say like your kids are a mirror of you, and
Yeah.
when she's older, I will thank her for
Mm-hmm.
helping me see that I needed to work through that,
Yeah.
and allowing me to become a better version of myself, and also just give that inner child, like you said, a hug, because I
Yeah.
really just needed a hug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, kudos to you for doing it because it's not easy work. Right. And it's like, it's not something that's ever totally gone. I feel like it's
Mm.
a journey that you're always sort of on. And once you have an awareness to it. Right. And I certainly don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying to hug my
Hmm.
inner child. And it's really beautiful when people get to do that for themselves
Yeah.
because more magic is then created from it. So
Agreed.
kudos to you.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we're at 6 month breaking point, right? We're just
Hmm.
gonna call it that.
Yep.
That right, we hit the 6 months, and clearly an overachiever. You even before you started Milk by Mom, when you decided to go all in, was it a clean break from your job, or how? Like, walk us through a little bit of that part.
Um, yeah. I mean, it took it took some time to have the moment of courage or clarity to be like, okay, I can't do these two anymore.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Nor will I really be able to. I'm doing a disservice to both ends, right? If I stay in my
Sure.
corporate job, I'm doing a disservice there. I'm not fulfilling what or feeling fulfilled, and at the same time, I'm not being able to take Milk by Mom to the next level. So when I decided to leave, it was kind of a perfect time.
Yeah.
And so when I left, it, there was a lot of restructuring happening, and I was in a management seat, and so I was attuned to the restructuring, so it was a
Sure.
perfect opportunity for me to say, hey, take me into consideration, right?
Okay.
And so I did, and so I was really fortunate to be able to have that clean break and do
Mm-hmm.
it in a way where I
Felt good
felt good
about
about
it.
it, because I was like, hey, I raised my hand, like, I want to be there.
Yeah.
Which was perfect. And then I left, and I remember having to hire like the first person, right? When you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there's just no way I can keep doing this alone. And
Yeah.
I was still very much pumping and breastfeeding at the time. And I remember calling my mom 911, and they had just been here. And I was like, I need you to come back. And it'd been like 2 or 3 months. And they came back in the throes of summer, right? Poor them. They did. And I'm like, I need you to come in. And I have them and like helping me packaging boxes, doing all this stuff. And, I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm, like with my pumping bra on, like topless. She's like, oh my God, you're like Frida Kahlo, Tirza. You gotta slow down. Like my mom's like, we got it. You gotta hire somebody.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, oh, maybe you're right. So.
Well, and then you do the whole, like, the first hire is the hardest because you do the
Yes.
whole, oh, but then I got to find the time to train them. And
we don't even have the money. Like, how am I going to pay for it? Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm with you. I'm there in the room. Things are flying. Boxes, tape is happening. We're doing it. And then what happens?
Then I hired my first hire, and it
Okay.
was game changing. I love her. She's still with me. She's, as I like to call her, my unicorn.
Yeah.
If anybody's seen that YouTube video, and when you find that unicorn, don't
Hold
ever
on.
let them go.
Yes.
Right. So she's very much there. Really grateful for that. And so since then, I mean, my team's grown. We're 6 people and counting. We are actually, I just signed today. Yay.
Ooh, let's celebrate.
Yeah, we just signed. So I'm like operating in less than 1,000 square feet, and we just signed for a facility that's 4,000 square feet.
Amazing.
So I'm
Congrats.
so excited because it's gonna just give us the runway that we need for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of really exciting things on the docket. We're fundraising, so we're really looking to expand and scale. And so, it's just been, that first hire was that first one, and then after that, it's been wonderful that I've been able to test and validate the market, and the demand is there, right? So you're growing.
Yeah.
So it's a good problem to have, but certainly one that you're still growing and uncomfortable at times, for sure.
Yeah, you deal with one uncomfortable thing, and then the next thing comes.
I just remember being in all these rooms with when we were at Girlfriends in Business. And so often women would come up, and like every time you're feeling really uncomfortable, or you're just like the challenges, like it's because you're getting ready to level up and expand to the next. And so I'm very much there, or have been for the last couple weeks. And I just keep on reminding myself of that, because there is definitely the internal self-sabotage of like, oh my gosh, can I do this? But then you're just like, fuck yes, I can.
You absolutely can. And you need your cheerleaders that you can be like, hey, pep talk me. Right?
Yeah.
I'm having a rough day. Tell me how awesome I am, because I am not believing it myself. You need those girlfriends that are going to be like, no, you've got this. Or the friends that you can call. That's the power of the community.
You're so spot on. And I think going back to that first year, and I mentioned it earlier, I did not prioritize community at all. And I remember just, as like one of those New Year resolutions, I was like, I need community. Like I desperately need community. And I remember immediately signing up for Girlfriends in Business, doing Powerhouse for Lindsay, and just like looking how I could get infiltrated, and never looking back after doing that. It was just it just was food to my heart and my soul to feel so seen with women and supported in a way that I just had not felt in a really long time. So
no, same. I mean, I was in a similar journey. Like one of the things I said, why I was there was for business besties, and really finding, moving back from California and not having that community. It's so important. You have to have somebody that you can call that's like, tell me how badass I am. Please. Because there's days when you don't feel badass and you need somebody to root for you. So no, I love that. Girlfriends in Business. I mean, Stephanie's here with us behind the scenes.
Love you.
And it's just like the friendships that have come from it are amazing. So yeah, I'm really happy that we got to connect there.
Me too.
And that you're expanding, because when we were there, you were like, you weren't sure. You weren't sure if you were going to go all in, or if you needed funding or whatever. And now you're expanding. It hasn't even been a year since then. It's literally happening in real time. Have you started the journey of fundraising?
I have.
Talk to us about that, because there's so many
such
entrepreneurs
an
that are
roller
like,
coaster.
yeah, we're going on the ride, the magical ride.
You know what? It's so funny. I think that when it comes to fundraising, my approach was talk to as many people as possible
Yeah.
and try to understand it first, right? Because yes,
Mhm.
hypothetically, we all get it. Okay, you're raising money,
Money.
but
Yeah.
how are you raising it? How are you structuring it? What are you
Mhm.
how much are you giving up for equity? How much of that? Or it's all, and so often you will talk to people that they will say, I wish I had done it differently. Right. And so
Mm.
tell me how.
Yeah.
And so all these things come into play. And so it really, as much as it's so valuable to have all these conversations, and I would definitely not replace them by any means,
Yeah.
it does get to a point where eventually you're like, there is no crystal ball and you
No.
have to do what feels right for you.
Yeah.
Right. And
And
so
believe that the right investor will come and
mhm.
use your gut and your discernment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, I am where I am because I truly believe in what Milk by Mom is doing. We
Oh,
are really
yes.
bringing forward a way of prolonging the benefits of breast milk, preserving breast milk.
Mhm.
And really, I mean, you alluded to it earlier. We have much bigger hopes and dreams than just being a breast milk freeze drying service.
Yeah.
And with that, being a true disruptor when it comes into the breastfeeding space.
I hopefully it's born here and it's okay that we say this, but I really want you to connect with donors so
Yes.
that you can help women that are struggling to produce. I think that would be so cool. It's already so cool what you're doing, but that's just
Mm-hmm.
like another
Yeah.
layer to it.
Any donors out there,
Yeah.
reach out.
Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it is there's, I talk about it like the fourth trimester.
Mm.
Not a lot of people, you have a baby and there's no handbook. You cannot quit. And somebody's life is literally at risk. And we used to, in the old days, there was a village. There's a reason why there's a saying that it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many moms, like I struggled with postpartum depression really bad after my first. And I talk about it anytime that I possibly can because I don't want someone to feel how I felt. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's when you're struggling to make milk for your child and you're like, especially if you have boobs, you're like, what is wrong? Why isn't it working? So I just think that that would be such an incredible addition to what you're already doing. And the
I
mission
wish I
is
could
so
go back
good.
and hug that version of you in that
Oh,
moment.
thank
It's so
you.
hard.
Yeah,
Breastfeeding, motherhood's very hard and
it is.
challenging, and breastfeeding is too. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point, there's those that are just really just fortunate to be able to have a good supply, and that was me. I was
Mm-hmm.
not an over producer, but I
Sure.
had enough to have for both of my girls and build up a healthy stash. And then you have moms that can't, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's where and you have moms that can produce a ton with baby one or two
Yeah.
and then none with the second, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like subjective. It's not,
Yep.
hey, I had I was a great breastfeeding mom with the first. It's going to be great for the second and third. It could very much
Well,
change.
and
And
it's a
there's so
mind
many,
fuck,
and there's so many
especially.
factors and variables that external that affect us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so good. So, with the funding, would you say, and I feel like I try and do this with mentors that I seek out, I'm like, who's had the biggest problems?
Mm.
Because that's who I want to learn from because they went through some shit. So, with fundraising, would you say that you're seeking out people that have raised, like, I would more so want to talk to people that are like, I would have done it different. Those are the people that I'm like, tell me about the experience so I can learn what would you have changed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in that initial phase when you're really trying to become more educated in terms of how you want to approach it, those are the
Mm-hmm.
most invaluable conversations, right?
Sure.
Anybody that did it perfectly or it was just too good to be true right off the bat, well, that's great, but more than likely, there's always a catch. There was always a but, or there was always something there, and so you want to learn from other people, right? I mean, that's the
For
best
sure.
way to learn from other people's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Every business is different, and every investor is different. So everything really comes down to your business and where you believe is going to be the best fit for you. I had a lot of those conversations to your point. And so yes, I mean, and more so it wasn't like I was seeking them out. I was very much open. Oh, somebody who does VC, or an investor group or an
Yeah.
angel. Oh yeah, can you connect us? I'm wanting to learn more. I'm looking to start a fundraising. And so inevitably and very organically, I had a lot of different conversations with the whole gamut, right? People
Yeah.
that did it really well and people that had a lot of, oh God, if onlys, I wish I could go back and do it differently. Some of the biggest takeaways I think that I had were around equity and how much
Yeah.
equity you give away.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will be like, oh, yeah, I gave them 10% equity. And then the other person's like, oh, no, I
Yeah.
did like 1%. And this is, and so then you're like, what's the right thing? But I always remember feeling like, oh, if I offer somebody a 0.5%, that feels really cheap. That
Yeah.
feels like very like not enough, right? What's right? Oh, is 5% too little, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of grapple with like, what sounds fair? Is that attractive? Like if I just offer, and then you start to have conversations where you say, hey, it's very common to
Yeah.
offer a 1% for in exchange for X services, right?
Yes.
And so then you feel less of a cheapskate and be like, no,
Yeah.
I'm founded in the fact that this is what I'm offering, and this is pretty average or pretty common, right?
Yep. In my company, we were bootstrapped, but we
Mm.
explored potentially taking on investors. And when we went through that brainstorming session, what we really did is we sat down and said, okay, what are we willing to pay and what do we want to get? Or what do we need and what are we
Mm.
willing to pay for it? And so I think it's really dependent on your organization, what your needs are, what your wants are. If you want somebody who's silent, if you want somebody who has a voice, right? And so I would say a good starting point is identifying what your needs are and then doing research to determine what value, what monetary
Mm.
amount should be attached to that. And that really helped us see, like, oh, we don't actually want an investor. We want to keep doing it this way. And so I feel like for us, that worked. If you're somebody listening and you're like, I'm thinking about raising funds, I think that's another like little golden nugget
Yeah.
that helps too. And it sounds like you did that
And
and
there
you
was,
just said it differently.
yeah. And I think one of the other things, I mean, I've tried a couple times. It hasn't worked out. But, I would be open to the concept of a co-founder, right? And so,
Sure.
or bringing
Ooh,
on, yeah.
anybody listening?
But it's got to be the right person, right?
Totally.
And so you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm manifesting it, and there were times where I was like, I'm manifesting a co-founder. I want somebody to do this with me, to be in the day to day and roll up their sleeves. Um, and then also what I realized was that fractional services are brilliant and
Yeah.
are a lifeline,
Mm-hmm.
right? And part of that, and there is this beauty, right? And so I think at one point earlier on, I was like, yes, I bring on a partner, and way more open about exchange of equity for that, where
Sure.
now I'm a little bit more reserved. I'm like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I can get fractional service here, or how can I afford to do this and still maintain the most equity possible? Not to say I'm not open to the concept of a co-founder, for sure, but I think it's just one of those things where you start to realize it kind of shift in how your perspective
Yeah.
is.
Well, and there's so many ways you can do things. Like I talk to
Absolutely.
clients all the time about what's your exit strategy.
Mm.
And your exit strategy doesn't have to be to sell. It can be, you want to grow, you want a certain amount of impact, you want a certain amount of time
Mm.
flexibility or freedom. And so it's all dependent on, like, if you start with anchoring to your why and your mission, and then what you want your life to look like, and then build around that, you'll have the life that you dream of today, eventually in the future.
Mm.
And so
Love that.
there's so many ways that you can do it. And that's what's fun about being an entrepreneur is you get to go, like, you get to try on different hats. You get to see what feels good. And if you are going to bring on a partner, my word of advice is agreements. Have a divorce clause, an exit strategy already built in that is solid, because things happen. And when you do that, it prevents a breakup that turns nasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you
It's like
for
a
that.
prenup for
Noted.
business,
I'm
right?
jotting
Yeah,
that
it's like a
down.
prenup for business. And because shit happens. People
Yeah.
change, life
And the
happens,
business
and
changes, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes things fall out of alignment. It's your baby, so you're always going to be more attached to it than
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. So that's so exciting though. I love to see
Thanks.
your expansion just in under a year.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. It's a perfect place. Like, and it was literally
Can you
when I
tell
tell
us where
you,
it is, or it's too
oh
secret
yeah, yeah,
yet?
yeah.
Tell
No,
us.
it's only 5 minutes away from our current facility right now,
Okay.
but it's even closer to the highway, so I think it'll be greater
Oh, more
and more
exposure.
convenient for our local mamas. It's on 49th and McDowell Street, like right off of the 202 or the 143. Um, and it's it's perfect. I said, okay, we're gonna go out. I went out with a realtor. We looked at two places. It was the
Hmm.
second place I looked at on the first day, and I was like, ooh,
The vibes were vibing.
I think this is it. But then you have
Did you
that
get the
moment, and you're like,
goosebumps, the full body
is this
chills?
too fast? No, it's like I haven't seen enough,
Yeah.
And then you're
That's
like,
when
no,
when you're talking yourself out of it. You're not listening to the whisper.
You're like, is this too fast, too soon? Like maybe, but it's perfect because it was a medical lab before, so they've done everything
Oh.
medical grade, and they were used to operating as a lab, and they did a ton of TI, so it's perfect. I'm so pumped. We'll definitely be doing like an opening party, and maybe I'll do stuff with
You
the
gotta let me
community
know.
when we do, for sure. It'll be great.
I love it. Okay, good. So I want to end on a super high because we like to get into the mess here, right? And that's where magic is born. But sometimes we forget to really celebrate ourselves in the day to day. So can you think of something that happened to you this week that we could celebrate as a magic moment?
I signed
Yes.
this new place. That would definitely be my magic moment of the week. It was like a month and a half of a labor of love, or more, 2 months. Yeah, I would say that would be it. Let me think what else. I feel like it's been a good week. I made an amazing contact with somebody that's like a newborn cares um, agency that's nationwide, and so we're going to start
Ooh,
partnering with them. So it's been a really good week.
ride the high.
Hopefully, I'm going after this to have an investor convo and locking someone in. So it's gonna I'm gonna end the week with a bang. I know it.
I love it. Okay, good. So tell us where we can find you and connect with you and learn more and follow along on the journey.
Thanks. Yeah, please follow me on Milk by Mom on all social media channels. And definitely, if you have any questions, reach out, send the DMs. Like, I would love to have a conversation with everybody and anybody who wants to learn more about Milk by Mom.
I love it. And if you know a donor facility that wants to partner with her, hit her up.
Yes, amen.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was such a pleasure having you. And thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much, Danielle.